What's up, everyone? Welcome to the April 21st edition of DraftKings Tournament Plays presented by Prize Picks. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoneyDFS. And as a reminder, you get one free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum when you sign up and make a deposit at Prize Picks. Be sure to use the code Awesemo to receive a 100% first deposit bonus up to $100. We're switching things up today, going back to the NBA because it's a weird scheduling day with Major League Baseball. Only 3 games tonight starting at 6:40 Eastern, just a really weird awkward slate, but we do have the 3-game NBA slate, postseason slate. So lots of stuff to talk about there. So we're going to go back to that, talk about 5 of the top tournament options on DraftKings using the boom bust tool on Awesemo.com. Starting at number 5, Brandon Clark, currently projected for about 25% ownership with a 28% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He has power forward and center eligibility. In the 2 games this postseason, he's averaged 1.24 DraftKings points per minute. He's averaged 24 minutes per game. Now, the playing time has been, it was very different between game 1 and game 2. Game 1, he played 27 or 28 minutes. Game 2, he played about 21 minutes. But in game 2, we also saw Steven Adams essentially removed from the rotation. Don't know if that will be the case tonight. We haven't gotten a Memphis starting lineup yet, but I think it's likely that Kyle Anderson replaces Adams in the starting lineup. Then the second question is, does Adams just completely not play like he didn't play at all in the second half of game 2, or does he get some backup center minutes, in which case that could hurt Clark a bit. But I think one or the other, Clark is good enough that he's likely to at least get you 20 to 22 minutes, if not more. I think that if Adams were to make his way back into the rotation as a backup, it would have a bigger impact on Xavier Tillman's minutes than it would Brandon Clark's. So still just looks like a solid tournament option at $4,700. Number 4, Reggie Bullock, projected for 21% ownership with a 29% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Luka Doncic is closer to doubtful. Woj reported a little bit ago. So for now, assuming that he doesn't play, you should still see huge minutes from Reggie Bullock. And he's not a particularly good point per minute guy. He's got a difficult matchup against Utah. It's a slow paced game overall. But through the first 2 games of this series, Bullock has averaged 44 and a half minutes per game. Even at the 0.61 DraftKings points per minute that he's averaging, or the 0.67 DraftKings points per minute that he averaged, overall this season, that's a lot of minutes and a lot of, solid fantasy production for a $5,100 price tag, even at a very low point per minute rate. Number 3, Patrick Beverley, 30% projected ownership, 32% chance of being in the optimal lineup. He's point guard only at $5,300. Beverley has averaged 28 and a half minutes per game and 0.82 DraftKings points per minute through the first 2 games of this series. In the regular season, he averaged around 28 to 30 minutes per game as well. The big question with Beverley is just, can he avoid foul trouble, because we know that he is asked to do a lot defensively at times that can get him into foul trouble. But assuming he's going to give you at least 28 to 30 minutes, if not more, it's worth keeping in mind that in their last game, he played 29 and a half minutes, and that game was a blowout where Beverley didn't play the final 6 minutes of the game. So you could certainly see even more playing time from Beverley if he does avoid foul trouble, and if the game is close. During the regular season, around 0.9 fantasy points per minute for Beverley. Looks like he's a little bit underpriced tonight at $5,300. Number 2, Dorian Finney-Smith, very similar to Reggie Bullock, projected for 33% ownership with a 36% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Finney-Smith has small forward and powered forward eligibility at $5,400. During the regular season, without Luka or Porzingis on the floor, Finney-Smith averaged around 0.8 DraftKings points per minute. Through the first 2 games of the series against Utah, he's only averaged 0.6 DraftKings points per minute, but he still averaged 43 minutes per game. And so even if you assume that his 0.8 fantasy points per minute does continue to, he does continue to produce fewer fantasy points per minute than he was in the regular season as a result of this matchup against the Jazz, that's still a ton of minutes for him to be out there at only $5,400. And number 1, Nikola Jokic, 41% projected ownership, 47% chance of being in the optimal lineup. Jokic is expensive at $11,200. He is also only center eligible on DraftKings, but he's very clearly the top projected player on the slate. There are a couple of risks with Jokic, one being that Golden State's just a lot better than Denver, and you certainly could get a blowout again, but this game only has a 2-point spread in Denver, so I don't think we should be overly concerned about that. The bigger issue is that there's just not a lot of good value on playoff slates. Granted, assuming Luka doesn't play, that does open up a little bit. We also have some value in Memphis, assuming that Steven Adams doesn't start. So I think that there are some guys, certainly you can take chances on to get to Jokic, but there's not a lot of value that you're going to be totally comfortable with. That being said, like I mentioned before, still a 47% chance of being in the optimal lineup for Jokic. That just speaks to how much better he projects than everybody else on this slate. 1.69 DraftKings points per minute and 31.5 minutes per game through the first 2 games of the postseason for him. If this game is competitive, it's much more likely we see 36 plus minutes from him. And there's no reason to think that he doesn't continue to produce at a high rate. So to recap, the top 5 tournament options on DraftKings: number 5, Brandon Clark; number 4, Reggie Bullock; number 3, Patrick Beverley; number 2, Dorian Finney-Smith; and number 1, Nikola Jokic.